You know what really gets me fired up? The absolute hypocrisy of how money gets spent in this country. They've got all the cash in the world for the wrong things, and I'm sick of pretending this is normal. ICE agents are getting $45,000 bonuses just for doing their jobs, jobs that pay six figures with nothing more than a high school diploma. Meanwhile, teachers, the people literally shaping our children's minds, are digging into their own paychecks to buy pencils and notebooks. In 2025, how does that make any sense? They're casually throwing around $200 million dollars to build some ridiculous ballroom at the White House because apparently the current one isn't fancy enough, but kids are going hungry because there's no money for food programs. They found cash to completely redo the Rose Garden because that's what America really needed, right? But families are choosing between groceries and medicine. And don't even get me started on the vice president taking 8 luxury vacations since taking office. Each trip costs hundreds of thousands in security, staff, and logistics, but they tell us with a straight face that we can't afford universal health care. We can afford to fly an entire security detail to some resort, but we can't afford to make sure people don't die from rationing insulin. We're sending billions of dollars overseas to fund other countries' free health care and education systems, while Americans are declaring bankruptcy from medical bills and drowning in student loan debt. Other countries have free college and universal health care funded by American taxpayers, but our own citizens, they can figure it out themselves. We always have money for wars, billions upon billions for defense contractors and military operations, but ask for money to fix our schools, help the homeless, or provide health care, and suddenly we're broke. That's America's priority list right there, and it's disgusting. So when politicians talk about making America great, this is what they mean: ripping food away from struggling families, making health care harder to get, forcing elderly people who work their whole lives to choose between medication and rent. If that's greatness, count me out. So there's this thing politicians are pushing called the One Big Beautiful Bill. Sounds nice, doesn't it? They always give the worst legislation pretty names. Don't fall for it. This bill is going to mess up millions of people's lives, and most people don't even know what's coming. Let me break this down in simple terms because politicians love to hide their real plans behind fancy language and bureaucratic nonsense. Think of it like this. Imagine your boss walks into work tomorrow and gives you 10 brand new projects that need to be done perfectly, but then cuts your budget in half and tells you to figure it out. That's exactly what this bill does to state governments across the country. The federal government is basically playing the world's cruelest game of hot potato. They're dumping massive new responsibilities on states, checking work requirements for health care, verifying who gets food assistance, enforcing complex new tax rules, managing court-ordered compliance programs, but they're not giving states a single penny to actually do any of this work. So what happens when you ask already overwhelmed state employees to do twice as much work with half the resources? The system collapses. People who desperately need help get lost in endless paperwork. Families lose benefits because some overworked caseworker made a mistake. States that can't keep up with these impossible demands lose federal funding, which makes their problems even worse, which makes it even harder to comply with the requirements. It's designed to fail, and when it does, they'll blame the states instead of the politicians who created this nightmare. Places like Mississippi, Arkansas, and parts of Michigan that are already struggling are going to get absolutely crushed. Their budgets will explode trying to meet these requirements, forcing them to choose between fixing roads, funding schools, or following federal mandates. Guess which one gets sacrificed every time? Now let's talk about what this disaster actually means for families like yours and mine, because while politicians play their games, real people suffer real consequences, making healthcare nearly impossible. They call them work requirements for Medicaid, but that's just fancy talk for making it way harder to get healthcare. Most people on Medicaid already work. They just don't make enough money to afford private insurance that costs more than their rent. Here's how this scam works. If you drive for Uber or DoorDash, work seasonal jobs, take care of a sick family member at home, or have a disability that makes your work schedule unpredictable, you're basically screwed. The system will now require more paperwork then a tax audit just to prove you deserve health care, one missed form, 1 week where you couldn't work because your kid got sick, one bureaucratic mistake by an overwhelmed state worker, and boom, you lose your doctor. Your prescriptions get cut off. Your cancer treatment stops. This isn't about encouraging work. It's about creating impossible barriers so fewer people can access care. Here's something nobody in power wants to admit, but I'm going to say it anyway. The American middle class is dead, not struggling, not evolving, not being redefined, dead and buried. And this bill is helping to shovel dirt on the grave. There was a time when being middle class meant something real and achievable. It meant owning a modest house that didn't eat up 60% of your income. It meant sending your kids to college without taking out a second mortgage. It meant actually retiring someday instead of working until you drop dead. Today, middle class means working 3 jobs and still worrying about making rent. This bill makes every single one of these problems worse. Sure, they throw working people a tiny tax break that sounds good in a campaign ad, but that small tax savings gets completely eaten up by rising healthcare costs, increasing rent, higher grocery prices, and all the other ways they squeeze regular families. Your $300 tax break doesn't mean much when your health insurance premiums go up $200 a month, your rent increases $150, and your grocery bill climbs another $100. That's not relief. That's a shell game designed to distract you while they pick your pocket. Meanwhile, the tax breaks for big corporations and billionaires are permanent and worth millions. They get the steak dinner while you get the crumbs, and they expect you to be grateful for it. Want to know how completely out of touch these politicians are with reality? There's absolutely nothing in this massive bill about housing. Nothing. Zero. The biggest expense for most American families, the crisis that's pricing out entire generations, and they completely ignored it. Houses that sold for $150,000 20 years ago are now going for $400,000 or more, while wages have barely budged. Young families are competing with Wall Street investment firms that buy entire neighborhoods with cash, turning family homes into rental properties and pricing out local buyers. Rent has skyrocketed to the point where people are spending 50% or more of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. There are teachers and nurses living in their cars because they can't afford apartments in the cities where they work. But this beautiful bill completely ignores all of it. No rental assistance programs, no eviction protections, no investment in affordable housing. The American dream of owning your own place has been turned into a luxury good that only the wealthy can access. So if regular families get crushed by this bill, who actually benefits? The same people who always benefit from these political scams: billionaires, massive corporations, and the politicians they own. While working families lose health care, food assistance, and any hope of affordable education, the ultra-wealthy get shiny new tax loopholes worth millions. This bill is more than just bad economics. It's part of a dangerous pattern. We think tyranny has to look like old movies with soldiers marching in the streets. But modern authoritarianism comes in golf carts and press conferences. It doesn't overthrow the government. It captures it from the inside. Here's the playbook. Create an emergency, blame certain groups, strip power from local governments, fill institutions with loyalists, then keep finding new enemies. First immigrants, then protesters, then journalists, then anyone who disagrees. Eventually, anyone who thinks for themselves becomes the enemy. People think they're safe because they're not the target yet. But authoritarianism always needs fresh enemies. When it comes for you, there'll be nobody left to help. So what can we do? We can accept this as normal, or we can fight back. Real fighting means action, not just social media complaints. Vote in every election, especially local ones. Support candidates funded by working people, not corporations. Join unions. Organize. Stay informed and help others understand what's happening. If you want this message to reach more people and spread awareness, kindly like this video and subscribe for more videos like this. It tells YouTube's algorithm to push the video and show it to more people. If we wake up and fight back, we can build something better. Wake up, America. It's time to fight for what's ours.